Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm looking about the room. I usually look around to see if they had a signal from one of our staff people that were on and recording, and now I've gotten it. So, welcome, everyone. Ms. Downs, can you hear and see us okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I can hear and see you as well. So good morning. Welcome everyone who's here to this session of the Board of Parole and Post-Prison Supervision. Let me introduce myself. My name is Felton. I'm chairperson of the board. I'm going to be the lead questioner in the hearing today. Also with me to my immediate left is board member Candace Wheeler.
Good morning, Ms. Downs.
And also is board vice chair Darcey Baker to her immediate left.
Good morning, Ms. Downs.
Morning.
And let me ask you, are you Elizabeth Diane Downs?
I am.
Is your
it's SID number 654-6106.
Very good. You read my mind, ma'am. Thank you very much. That was my immediate next question. And just to let you know who else is here, ma'am, we are joined by board staff. Who else is in the room? Board staff are here. Department of Corrections staff are here. Representative of the Oregon State Police are here. We are here at Chemeketa Community College, and also representatives of the college are here. Members of the public are in attendance today. Also members of the media. I would note as well that Paul Graebner of the Lane County District Attorney's Office is also present. And I also note for the record that Mr. Graebner sent in a letter on behalf of the victims in this matter. Ma'am, before we go any further, I would like to note that this is the time for your parole consideration hearing, which is a hearing to decide whether you are dangerous, not dangerous, or that you remain dangerous, but can be adequately controlled with supervision and treatment. Do you understand that, ma'am?
Yes, I do.
We've also received a letter from you indicating that you did not wish to participate in today's hearing. And you've also, the California authorities, prison authorities, have brought you today to participate in the hearing to the limited extent to ask you again, and I'd like to ask you, would you like to participate in today's hearing?
No, I would not.
Okay. I'd like to explain to you the consequences of that decision. The board is going to hold this hearing, and the board is going to make a decision. The board, therefore, if you do not wish to participate in this hearing, is going to make a decision based on the record before us. And the record before us consists of the written documents containing the parole packet, which we sent to you. Let me ask you, did you receive that packet more than 14 days ago?
Yes, I did. In fact, it was 15 days ago, yes.
Thank you for clarifying, ma'am. Consequently, the decision that we make will not involve your participation. And I'd urge you to consider that, because the board takes very seriously and finds very meaningful and helpful the verbal conversation that we have with offenders during these proceedings. So are you absolutely sure you do not wish to participate in today's hearing?
Let me ask you if you feel that there will be more that you can learn today than you learned 2 years ago?
Ma'am.
And I'm not being... you're a new parole board member, and so maybe you have different questions, but I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but I don't know what can have changed in the past 2 years that wasn't covered 2 years ago.
Well, ma'am, I am the new member of the board, so obviously my questions would be different than the other members of the board, and I do not take your questions as sarcastic or in any way inappropriate. So I simply cannot say, and so I do not know what would happen in our conversation. I can only say that the interview that happens between the offender and the board members is an important part of the overall component to our decision. It is one of many factors we take into account.
All right. I will stay, and we will converse.
All right.
Yes. Are you guys busy?
I'm going to be staying.
Okay.
No, that won't be in there, but...
Sorry, guys.
Ma'am.
Yes.
What I would like to... Ms. Downs.
Yes.
Oh, that's fine.
Some of the staff have things they had to do. They weren't expecting me to stay, so they're kind of jiggling around.
Okay.
We're good now. Thank you.
That's okay. Are you prepared to go forward then?
I didn't bring anything. There's really nothing for me. My position is ORS 161.725 is the only thing that holds me past January 9th of 2002. And therefore only ORS 144.228 has the power to retain or release me. So past that, there's nothing that I can present that's more powerful than that or meaningful, I suppose. I brought nothing. I don't have anything.
Well, as we indicated in our correspondence to you, and we informed you that we would be holding this hearing today and going forward.
Yes.
So we are going to do that.
Yes.
So consequently, we will be doing that. So let me ask you some preliminary questions then. I want to go forward. I'd like to just then basically establish the written record for today's hearing, if I could. And what we have from you is we received some letters from you. First of all, we received a letter from you dated October 21st, 2010, 4 pages long, plus an attachment. We received a letter dated November 30th, 2010, which is 12 pages, plus an attachment. We also received a letter dated December 3rd, 2010, which constitutes 6 pages. Are there any other documents that you'd want us to consider from you?
No.
Okay.
No, I have nothing else.
Now, the board in your packet received a Department of Corrections institutional report dated October 8th, 2010, and that was prepared by Barb Cooney, the Capacity Resource and Intake Administrator of the Office of Population Management. That report was approved by Max Williams, the Director of the Oregon Department of Corrections. Did you have an opportunity to review that report, ma'am?
Yes, I did.
Have any comments or objections you'd like to make about that report?
No.
Now, the board ordered and you participated in a psychological evaluation for today's hearing. In your packet of material provided to you by the board is Dr. S. Schulte's psychological evaluation from October 29th, 2010. Did you have an opportunity to review that evaluation?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any comments or objections you'd like to make about that report?
Only the second letter that you referred to, I believe it's a 12-page letter with attachments. That was my reference to that.
Okay. Now, that is the letter dated November 30th of 2010?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, so I'll note that is your... Sorry?
I just remembered something that Barb Clooney's report.
Yes, ma'am.
There is one thing that I would like to address in there that I didn't address this time because it was addressed last time and I didn't want to become redundant.
Go ahead.
There is a report in there that I was charged with an attempted escape across the street, or planning to escape across the street because caulking was taken out of a window in ADSEG.
Yes.
I'm thinking it was something like May of 94. Something to that effect.
Is that May of 1989? I see an attempt.
No.
It's April 9th, 1994, page 5 of the report.
Very good. That's
April.
Yes, page 5 of the report, April of 94.
Okay.
Yes.
I appealed that all the way to Sacramento. Sacramento overturned that, removed it, ordered me to be reheard on that because when I first moved in the cell, when I was still handcuffed, when you go to ADSEG, you walk into your cell handcuffed. And when I was still handcuffed, I could see the window, and I told Officer Molina, the caulking has been removed from this window. So she said, whenever you do your inspection, your cell inspection report, note it in there, and I will sign it. she examined it, she saw that it was true. So every time you move into a new cell in ADSEG, you sign a cell inspection report that says whether your water works, your electricity works, whatever. So I wrote in there that the caulking had been removed from the window. She signed it and she put it on file. When I went for my 115 hearing, what we in Oregon call a DR hearing, when I went for the 115 hearing, the lieutenant who heard me the first time refused to pull the file and see it. I had been in that cell probably 3 weeks when the officer determined that it had been removed. So I appealed the finding of guilt all the way to Sacramento. Sacramento said that I was disallowed to use the evidence to support the facts. They overturned it. I was ordered to be heard again. The lieutenant, when he heard it, he said, "Where is that report?" I said, "Right in that box over there." They keep everything in the ADSEG unit. He himself got up, walked over, pulled the report, came back and said, "This one?" He said, "Yes." He said, "It was signed by Officer Molina in red." I said, "Yes." He said, "How could he have missed that? It's signed in red." I said, "He didn't look at it." He said, "Not guilty." So that shouldn't even be there. In California, when your 115 is found not guilty, they completely remove it from the file. Why it's there, I don't know.
No.
But that's the only thing that stands out as a big red flag from Barb Clooney's report that I just shook my head over.
So I've noted that, and so besides that, everything else in the institutional report is accurate?
I don't, marginally so sometimes. I mean, that's the only one that is glaring. The rest of it is part of prison. I mean, it's a matter of perspective. Some people see things one way, some people see things another way, people see things really this way. But it's the only thing that is incredibly hurtful to me. So.
Thank you. We noted your correction for the oral record.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to point out at this point?
No, I think we were finishing up with the psych reports.
So is there anything about the psych evaluation you'd like to point out at this point? But Dr. Schulte's report?
Nothing really except what I wrote in the letter that I referred to.
So, just clarifying that your response in that letter constitutes your response to the psych evaluation of Dr. Schulte?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Also, just like to note for the record that also in the board's hearing packet is Mr. Gravener's letter and the attached 86-page transcript of the prior 08 board hearing. Also, we have a 1984 letter from Douglas Welch of the Lane County Sheriff's Office, the pre-sentence investigation, their sentencing-related documents, their prior board action forms and associated documents, and various DOC forms. All right, so that will constitute the written record for the board hearing.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to start the questioning. So, ma'am, the first, as you know from last time, the first question we always ask in these hearings is, please tell the board why you're in prison.
I was convicted of murder.
Can you be more specific?
I was convicted of the murder of my daughter and the attempted murder of my daughter and my son.
Now, over the past, or certainly in the past hearing, over the past few years, you've maintained your innocence in that matter. Do you still maintain that you did not commit these murders? Or the murder and the other crimes you were convicted of?
Absolutely. I didn't commit them, and I still maintain my innocence.
Would you describe for the board the circumstances around the events which happened that led to your conviction?
Freezing up, yeah.
That's an open question. Okay, the circumstances that led to the conviction.
Hopefully that happens in the afternoon.
Okay, this is going to be complicated because that I would need a narrower question, because that's a huge 9-month period of activity that led to the arrest, and then another 3 months. My children were attacked on May 19th of 1983, and I wasn't arrested until February 28th of 1984. Didn't go to trial till May 5th of 1984, and there's a lot of things that led up to that. It wasn't just that guy shooting my kids. That wasn't what put me in prison.
Okay, well,
There was a whole lot of other...
Ma'am,
Yes.
let me narrow it down. The night you took your children to the hospital in Springfield, will you describe the events of that evening?
Yes. My kids and I were sitting at home watching TV. We were watching Helen Keller, the Helen Keller story. I received a phone call from someone who said that he wanted me to come pick up some photographs for my boyfriend. Not of my boyfriend, but for my boyfriend, Rick. Rick is a guy that I'd been dating for about 6 weeks, and he claimed to be an FBI agent. Whether or not he was, I don't know. I certainly never called him at work or showed up or made him prove it or show a badge. It didn't matter to me. To me it was just dating. But I received a phone call about 9:15 from someone who said I needed to come pick some photographs up for Rick. I piled the kids in the car. We went out to go meet this person to pick up the photographs. I stopped by Heather... Wow, I can't remember Heather's last name now. I stopped by Heather's house because I told Heather on the phone a few days earlier that I had a newspaper ad for her. So she had been wanting to buy a horse, and this was a newspaper ad that would allow her to adopt a horse. So I had told her that I had a newspaper clipping for her that I'd found at work. So as long as we were going out to meet this guy to pick up photographs, we went by Heather's house. Heather said, I already got a horse just the other day. So we went to see the horse. We got back in the car. We left. I went to meet this guy. Somebody in the road flagged us down. I stopped and got out of my car. And he said something to the effect of, I want your car. And I laughed at him. And I said, you've got to be kidding. Because in my mind, those kinds of things don't happen. In Arizona, those things don't happen. I don't know about Oregon, but in Arizona, those things don't happen. And so he jumped into the car, leaned into the car, and started firing the weapon. And it happened so quickly that by the time he stood up and faced me, it was over. I mean, it was just that fast. He said something about the car again, and I struggled with him. The gun discharged. He fell back. I jumped in the car, put the keys in the ignition, and took off. The car door shut by itself. That's it, and I went to the hospital. Christy and Danny were in the back seat. When we got to the hospital, they were still crying. The nurses reported that they were still crying. The state says that I was the one that shot them and that I wanted them dead. If that was the case, I would not have taken them to the hospital still crying. There are so many other ways to accomplish such a horrific deed if I was going to do it. I'm certainly bright enough to figure out another way besides some way that looks so absolutely insane and hokey that nobody would believe it. I'm not dumb.
So ultimately, you told several different versions of the story when law enforcement investigated this, correct? When you talked
Not
to the
correct.
parties, ultimately, well, I understood that you told the law enforcement that this was done by two men with ski masks.
This is what somebody told me. How do I explain this? After my children and I were attacked, the police kept saying, Diane, you must have lapses in your memory because there's holes in this you could drive a semi-truck through. None of this makes sense. You're forgetting something. I believed, because I'd never had any dealings with authorities, and I believed the authorities, and so I thought they did, that I had lapses of memory. I can't tell you how the towel got around my arm, so I know from my own personal experience that I did have at least that much of a lapse of memory. I don't know how the towel got around my arm. So when I would have, when people would call me up and people would say, I know so-and-so and he said such and such. I have another guy would call and say, I have a neighbor and he has a car that just looks just like that and he's been talking. These kinds of things were being said to me either by phone. People would stop me on my mail route. I worked in Cottage Grove and people would drive all the way to Cottage Grove just to meet me on my mail route and tell me these kinds of things. So I would call the police, or I would go to the police and I would say, this is what's being told to me. Those are the kinds of things they would say that I changed my story. I wasn't changing my story. I was trying to help. The police kept saying I had lapses of memory. People were calling me and telling me things that I thought, well, maybe this is what happened that I don't know, and so I would tell the police, believing that I was helping them investigate. They didn't tell anybody that these are reports, that I was giving them reports from other people. They would simply say, Diane came in and said such and such. The one about the ski mask was dreams that I was having, and they kept saying, well, maybe you forgot something. So when I would have a dream and I would wake up, I would think, well, maybe that's what I would forget. And so the ski mask story, I didn't tell the police. I was talking to somebody on the phone, and I was sharing this dream, this thought with somebody, trying to understand in the same way that you would talk to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, so that you can, because if you talk, maybe you can reach something. Maybe you can find something that's inside you that's locked off. And so I was sharing this with somebody else, and the police were tape recording those phone calls and then said, oh, there she goes, she changed her story. And that wasn't it, and they know that wasn't it.
Okay, well, ma'am, I guess perhaps you could clarify it for me, because as you said, I am the newest person here, and I'm asking you new questions, but when I'm reading the pre-sentence investigation, and it says, subsequently, defendant gave a total of 3 different versions of the shooting, including that it was done by 2 men wearing ski masks, and also that she knew the person who shot them. Did you not give 3 different versions of the story?
The police said, strangers don't shoot strangers for no reason. So I believe this had to be somebody who knew me. They also, at one point, the last day that I got to see Christy in the hospital, I believe it was June 15th of '83, Doug Welch came to the hospital and said, Steve Downs did this. We know Steve Downs did this. You need to be willing to testify against him. I said, how do you know Steve Downs, my ex-husband? How do you know Steve Downs did this? Give me the evidence. He said, don't worry about the evidence, just be willing to testify. I said, if you can't prove to me he did it, he's not the one that fired the gun. He said, but he was behind it. I said, I cannot testify against somebody unless you can prove to me that he did this. I know he hates me, but why would he hurt the kids? Doug Welch said, you better be willing to play ball or you'll never see your kids again. And I said, I cannot testify against somebody unless you can prove to me that he did it. The next day when I went to see my children, I was not allowed to see my children ever again. That gave me the belief that the police were absolutely convinced that somebody I knew did this. And if the police believed it, then I believed it. Now, if they want to turn this all around and say, Diane changed her story, that's not what happened. And you guys are on the parole board, and I know you work with the legal authorities. You work with police, you work with the district attorneys, and so you know how they work. It's how I know now what they were trying to do. They were trying to scoop me into a corner so that, so that I would say or do something that would incriminate me, which certainly worked. But that's not what happened. Though what I'm telling you is exactly what happened. Doug Welch came to the the hospital in Springfield. Oh, I can't even think. Mackenzie Willamette. No, anyway, to the Springfield Hospital. He sat right there. He caught me when I was coming through the front door. He pulled me into the lobby, and these are the things he said to me. I went to see Christy for 15 minutes because that's all I was allowed. I left, and he was standing there, and he goes, I'm not playing, Diane. And I said, prove to me Steve did this. He says, let us worry about the proof. And I said, I can't testify against him unless you can prove to me he did this. And I left. The next day, I did not see my children ever again until court. And that was it. And so I believed. I believed what I thought the police believed. Now, maybe they did believe that. Maybe to this day they still believe it, because Fred Hugie was, another time he told my attorney, Jim Jagger said, Fred, you know Diane is innocent. He said, I know that and you know that, but she's covering for somebody, and as long as she's going to cover for somebody, she's going to do that person's time. Jim Jagger said, go ahead.
I said, so is it what you're saying today is that the prosecutor in your case knew you were innocent, yet in order to get someone else, to convict someone else for this, he basically threatened to keep your kids from you in order to get you to make incriminating testimony against somebody else? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Jim Jagger told me Fred Hugie said this to him. I don't know that Fred Hugie said this. I have no reason to believe Fred Hugie said this now. But that's what Jim Jagger told me Fred Hugie said. So from that point on, I believed that Fred Hugie believed that it was somebody that I knew. That's what I'm telling you. That is what shaped my belief patterns. And so when I would talk to the police, I spoke to the police as if it was somebody that was familiar to me. Not because I believed they were familiar to me, but because Fred Hugie told Jim Jagger, and Jim Jagger told me that Fred Hugie told him this. I have no reason to believe Fred Hugie would do that. I don't. Fred Hugie adopted my children, I think, during the trial. Can I go ahead and jump ahead with this?
Sure.
Okay. During the trial, at the very end of the trial, Fred Hugie, they brought in a mock-up of the car, and Fred Hugie got a gun, and he was reenacting the crime. And when he was going through the motions of firing the gun at the Christie doll and at the Cheryl doll and at the Danny doll, he couldn't shoot the Danny doll because the Danny doll was back here. And he raised up and he looked at me, and I went like this, and his face, he had a look of incredulation on his face, and his mouth started to open, and I nodded my head yes, and he had to switch the gun to the left hand. A right-handed person could not have shot the Danny doll. It was at that time, I don't think at any time before that did Fred Hugie believe that he was doing anything wrong. I think that he believed full bore that what he was doing was the right thing. But, and I'm not inside Fred Hugie's head, I don't have the right to speak for him, and I won't speak for him, but it was after that he adopted my children, and according to Christie, never said a bad word against me. Ever. That was out of Christie's mouth. Fred Hugie, in all the time that he raised her, never spoke ill of me. I believe that Fred Hugie knows that there is a man out there that was hunting my children, and it wasn't until after Christie told her schoolmates that she drew pictures in school, and she said, this is the man who shot us. I lied in court because they wanted me to say this and they wouldn't leave me alone. Dr. Peters, she said, Dr. Peterson kept pressuring me and he wouldn't leave me alone. Those children, the Andresens, told their mother told her, the apartment manager, and the apartment manager told somebody. Now, he didn't tell my attorney until 1991, but he apparently told somebody before that. But it was at that time when Christie was in that school and classmates with the Andresen twins that Fred Hugie decided to adopt my children. I assume, and I don't know this because I've never asked Fred Hugie, and I can't put words in his head, but I assume that he got word that Christie was talking about the man who shot her. I do not believe Fred Hugie. My mom believes Fred Hugie adopted the kids to keep her quiet. I don't. I believe Fred Hugie adopted my kids to keep them quiet because if the man that shot my children found out that Christie could identify him, she would be a target again. Okay. That is what I believe.
Ma'am. So is it your belief that at some level you think the man that prosecuted you thinks that you may be innocent?
I don't know. I believe, but that doesn't mean it's... I believe he has doubt. Let's put it that way. I believe he has enough doubt. All right.
So, why would you go out with your children at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night because somebody calls you up saying they have photographs of your boyfriend and meet this perfect stranger?
Well, he certainly wasn't perfect. Because Rick said that he was an FBI agent. FBI agent. I had no reason to believe or doubt him, but I know that he used to take me to these houses, and he would send me into these houses and ask me to look around, and I would come back and I would tell him what I had seen. He never told me what to look for. He simply said, look around, tell me what you see when you come back. I would tell him, then we would go and have our date. That was a Friday night ritual. This was a Thursday night, and that seemed to support his allegation that he was an FBI agent. This was a Thursday night. May 19th was a Thursday night. I received a phone call from somebody saying, I have pictures that your boyfriend wants. I assumed that they were for the different people that I was looking at in these houses. I said, I'll see Rick tomorrow night. We'll come get them together. Or I'll see Rick tomorrow night. He can come get them himself. This man on the phone said, no, if you don't come get them now, you'll never get them. I said, okay. And I know that seems juvenile, but I was juvenile back then. I was. I was very young. I lived a very sheltered life. The meanest people to me in my whole life were Robert Crone and his friends in the 4th grade. And 4th, 5th, 6th, they were the meanest people in my whole life except for my ex-husband. Robert Crone, Ray Hunt, and Dale Christofferson. And they were the meanest people. And they were children. And so I had no reason to believe that strangers would hurt me for no reason. So when he said that I needed these pictures for my boyfriend, I said, okay. So I went and got them. It wasn't... Going into it, you don't imagine, okay, all of these horrible, horrible things can happen. I wish I was clairvoyant. I wish I did have the ability to foretell the future.
I'd like to move to a different topic now. Since you've been in the prison, how have you spent your time? Have you done any programming?
I study, I read, I've been a clerk, I've been yard crew, I've worked in the canteen, I tutor. I've tutored 3 people to get their GED. I've taken anger management classes, stress management classes, business classes, parenting classes. Goodness, there's a list of them. You have most of them. I can't think of all of them.
Well, can you talk about which ones have been the most meaningful to you? Because you've suffered, accepting your version of events, you suffered a terrible loss of your children. Have you not?
Yes.
Have you done any programming?
Yes.
Have you done any programming to address that?
Yes. Every day for me is addressing that.
How have you done that?
For me, the greatest catharsis for me is trying to find the person who did this. That for me is cathartic.
And how do you go about doing that?
I listen to what people say. When people write me, and I know now that they are most of the time writing very bizarre lies in order to mislead me, in order to, for whatever fun they get out of that. But listening to the stories, listening to the mindset of people. I've lived around prisoners, criminals, drug addicts, violators, abusers, murderers, elder abusers. I've lived around every kind of dark soul that you can imagine for 27 years. And you learn to recognize patterns, you learn to recognize behaviorisms, red flags, And those are the things that I've been doing. And so when I see these things, I go back to when this happened to us, and I think, was there something that I, in my naivety, could have seen? If I had been more worldly, if I had been more experienced, are there things? Yes. You don't walk into houses or look around and go back and tell somebody what's happening when people are using drugs in the house. But I've never used drugs before, so I literally had no concept that drug abusers are dangerous. I really, really didn't. The first time that Rick sent me into a house and said, look around, and I saw drugs being used, I should have run back out and said, are you crazy? But I didn't, because I thought he was the good guy, and I was helping the good guys catch bad guys. That, number one, I should never have done that. I know this now. Should this ever... I'm 55 years old. I've been menopausal for 5 years. I will never have children again. But if for some reason I was to ever, because that's what the doctor said, if this situation ever presents itself again, I can see that this is a possibility that it might happen.
What situation?
Okay, I'm never going to have children.
What situation are you talking about?
I don't know. That's what she wrote in her report, so I didn't even know how to address it. If this situation ever happens again, I can see that it's a possibility that it might turn out the same way. I have no idea what that means. And so I have run the gamut, the scope of trying to figure out what situation. I'm postmenopausal, I'll never have children, so I'll never be out on a dark road with my children again, so that's not going to happen. I'm never going to receive a phone call and pack my children in the car and go pick up photographs ever again. So I don't really know what she said, and she didn't tell me these things to my face. She wrote the report, and so I can't ask her what they mean, but that's what she said.
According to her report, she spent over 2 hours with you. Did you have any discussion with her? Were you able to develop any insight from that discussion with her? Have you developed any insight from the programs you have done while in the institution over why perhaps you're where you are? Can you share that with the board?
Well, I'm trying. I don't... For all the words that I have in my vocabulary, I don't know how to explain it. I have studied anger management. I don't get angry. I don't get angry. The staff can tell you I don't flash on people. I don't get angry. But through anger management, I've learned to see triggers when other people get angry. And so I have learned, this is why I haven't been in any fights. I have learned that when I see a situation that is going to be dangerous, even though it might not be dangerous for 15 minutes, I know how to skirt around that and to avoid that kind of danger. But I didn't have to take an anger management class to know that. Prison has been one heck of an anger management class. Everywhere around me, people are angry. In here, they fight and it's a badge of honor. It's different now. Back in the day, it wasn't like this. And the women now, it's like they kudos to each other for all the violence they can do to each other. And so this is a training ground for learning how to either become very violent and very angry, or to learn how to avoid that and the people that are with you. When you are standing with a group of women and you see or hear or feel something, you take your group and you go someplace safe. So that's one kind of insight that I have that I certainly didn't have before. Parenting. I took the parenting class, and I taught the parenting class after I took the class. And by taking it, I was able to learn, because there's a man who teaches the class, and you get his perspective. And then there are other people in his group that you are watching, and you get their perspective. And then as you're doing it, your mind unconsciously says, well, I would have done this, or I would have done that, or I did this, or I did that. And so you can't help but have some introspection, because it's just the way the mind works. But then by teaching the class, then I get to hear from the women and have feedback from the women back and forth about what they've done and what they haven't done.
Ms. Downs,
So
did I hear you right? Did I hear you right that you say you taught the parenting class in the institution?
It's not the institution. It's it was in D2. It's a unit.
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. So within the prison system, at some point, you were teaching parenting classes?
Yes. That was part of my job description. I took the class and then I taught the class. Yes, yes. I took anger management, and then I taught anger management. I took victims awareness, and then I taught victims awareness. It was a give and a take. I got something, I gave something back, and by giving something back, they gave something back to me too. It was very interactive for all the way around. And so when you're doing those things, you can't help but learn something. You can't.
Well, I noticed that you haven't had any, well, since we call them DRs here in Oregon, let's just call them DRs for the purposes of the hearing. You haven't had any since 2006. Yes. But up to that point, they're fairly significant. And you're right, they weren't around necessarily fighting, but they were fairly significant around, well, there was certainly the escape, there was not following the rules and that sort of thing, but you haven't had any since 2006. What's different now since then? You made any changes you can talk about?
Maybe it's a little bit of that insight we're not talking about. Well, I don't know.
This is your time to talk about it, though. So talk.
I'm old. I'm tired, and I have answers.
What are those answers?
But they're not the answers that you want. I know you're having a really hard time believing that I didn't do this, but I cannot change my reality, what is real, what I know in my heart and soul to please you. And so I'm going to have to answer you based on what I know is real for me. Well, the only thing that has ever...
Ma'am, let me be blunt. We're not here for you to please us, and we're here to find out and hear from you why you're not dangerous or not a danger. We have a decision to make. Okay, so you don't worry about pleasing us or saying anything. We want to hear the truth and what you honestly believe. That's what we're here for. So, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. When I came to prison, my goal was not to get out of prison. I don't want to sound sassy here, but I left prison once before. So if I wanted to leave prison while I was in Oregon, I didn't have to wait 3 years to do it. I waited 3 years because I was looking for information. And I can tell by the look on your face that this offends you somehow, and I apologize for that. I don't say it to be offensive. But the way that I left prison, I was there 3 years before I escaped. If escaping prison was my goal, I could have certainly done that within the first year or the first 6 months. I wanted information. I wanted to know who murdered my daughter. And since I believed that it was somehow connected to the drug houses that Rick sent me into, what better place for me to get information than from the people that used to frequent those houses, the drug addicts that lived and went to those houses. So my whole goal all of these years has simply been to find the man that murdered my daughter. And as I have done this, that is my whole focus. For all these years, that has been my focus. When I am met with obstacles, I sit back, I retire, I watch, I listen, or I engage. I either actively ask questions, which makes people very angry at me, which puts me on heightened awareness, which makes me feel a little more stressed out. And it also, because I'm stressed, the staff watch everything that I do because of my escape in Oregon. And so when I'm stressed, the staff becomes stressed and they can't help but respond, which then in turn makes the inmates respond. It's a huge washing machine of emotions in this prison. Okay, 2006, I finally got my answers. I'm no longer having to actively pursue and hunt and analyze and look for the answers that I've been looking for. And so it has allowed me to become the person that I am, which is peaceful, quiet, calm, laid back. If you people could see me in my natural element, the only time you ever see me is when I'm on TV and I'm pursuing leads, when I'm chumming the waters for the shark. When I see myself on TV, it is incredibly embarrassing, but it is the only way that I could think of to incite people to want to contact me with information. It is sad, but the staff that see me around here, I'm by myself pulling weeds, or I'm helping somebody carry a bag of groceries to their unit, or I'm sitting and tutoring somebody so they can pass their GED, or I'm listening to somebody cry because they can't get home to see their kids, or that is me in my natural element. But you don't see that when I'm on television, because on television I'm looking for answers and clues. And since 2006 I haven't needed to, well, actually since 2005 I haven't needed to do that. And so I don't have to be provocative as far as asking questions that I know are going to put people on edge and send them running to the phone to call somebody who's going to call somebody else who's going to call somebody else. That's what I've been doing all these years. If I see somebody and hear that somebody has said something that is somehow connected to what happened to us, I will say things that literally could put me in grave danger. I will say something to that person innocently and crazy and with that really naive kind of a dingy kind of dorky way that I have of just hysterically running around and doing these things, and then they will run to the phone really quick and they will call somebody. And then they will call somebody, I assume, because shortly after that I'll get a slew of letters. And somewhere in there was some answers, but somewhere out there was people who knew the answers that it had activated. And I haven't had to do that. I can just be the mellow, old, normal me that nobody has ever seen. So,
let's shift to a different topic. If you were to be released into the community, where would you go? Where would you live?
With my parents in Texas. There you go.
Have you talked with them about that recently?
Yeah. They were here August 29th, and as far as I know, the last I heard from my parents, they had just put in new carpeting. My parents they live I hate doing this with your whole Chemeketa Community College auditorium full of people who now know where to go and stand outside the door and go, is Diane in there? Can she come out and talk to us? And that bothers me. But in August 29th, when my parents came to visit, they live on a farm, and they have a garage out back behind that has an apartment over the garage. And when they were here on August 29th, they had renewed the carpeting. They did this before my last hearing, before my last board hearing 2 years ago. They usually rent the apartment out. They evicted their tenants. They put new carpeting in. They got new furniture. They got a new TV and everything else. It is a big apartment that I could have. They also said, if you would like to live in the house, you can have the bedroom on the east wing. They said, because their reasoning was, they're trying to imagine what it's been like for me to live in an 8-man cell, 4,000 women, for all these years. Am I going to need the security of living with my parents and knowing that there's somebody right there, or am I going to want the freedom emotionally to have my own place that I can call my own without having to worry about 7 roommates right there and vying for the sink and the toilet and the shower and everything else? They don't know. They are trying to cover all bases so that they're letting me know that I have the option of choosing for myself, that I can live alone or I can live with them, whatever makes me most comfortable.
Well, good.
So, yeah, we talked about that. Oh.
You had conversations about your needs, but have you thought about their needs? Because your case obviously has attracted some attention. How will it be for them with all the potential attention that you living with them might bring upon them? Have you thought about their needs in this?
Yes. Every time I call home, I ask them, can we please move? I want them to move to another place. When I used to file legal work, back before I finally got my answers, and you check and see when my legal work all stopped. It's when I finally got the answers and I was finally able to calm down and just be me again, about 2005. But back in the day when my dad would file, I would write everything, my dad would type it, my mom would copy it, and she would do the filing for all of my legal work. Well, my dad, on the filing page, that's the certificate of mailing, you have to sign your name. My dad would always put his address. So everybody knows where my parents live. And so every time I would talk to my parents on the phone, not every time, at least once a month when I talked to my parents on the phone, I would say, please, can we move someplace else? I would like to live someplace else where nobody can find you, because people are going to be coming by the house all the time, wanting to peek in the windows, wanting to, heaven knows what. And I don't want us to have to deal with heaven knows what. My dad's 80. He had a stroke 2 years ago. He's very thin. He's lost 30 pounds. He stumbles. He falls. My goodness gracious, when they were here in August, his whole arm was bruised. I was scared to death that my mom was going to be arrested for battery of an elder, and I asked, what happened to you? My mom says, he falls now. And I do not want my parents to have to worry about when my mom has to go out and get groceries, because she can't get my dad to go in the car. It's easier for my dad to just stay at home. I don't want my mom to have to worry about when she has to go grocery shopping. Is somebody at the end of Quarter Mile Road going to be there throwing tomatoes at the car, or wanting a signature, or can you sign my book, or whatever? I don't want and so I would ask them, please just move. And it wasn't until May of this year, when it was finally time, they know by ORS 144.228 that my parole date was May 9th. And so in April, my mom said, I've decided we're going to move and not tell the kids where we're going. I said, okay. But so my parents finally said yes, that they will move. Unfortunately, for me to move, I have to tell you guys where I'm moving, and it's the same as telling the media where I'm moving, and telling the media is telling the wackos, because somehow the wackos always seem to know everything. And the only thing that I can ask is, please, if you do parole me and you allow us to transfer to another state, someplace, please don't tell anybody where we are. I mean, it's the only way that I can keep my parents safe. I'm not worried. Come on, I live with 4,000 of the worst people in humanity, and it's a washing machine. It keeps turning over and turning over. We in California, we parole 11,000 people a year, and they come right back. So I'm not concerned about my safety, but my parents are old. If you think that it's better for me to parole someplace and never see my parents, again, and that's the only way to keep them safe, then I would do that. But I don't want to not see my parents again. I love my parents. My dad needs me to take care of him. He's 80 and he falls. He's a big man. My mom's a little woman. She doesn't, when it finally comes time to start bathing him and taking care of him, my mom isn't going to be able to do that by herself. Sending me someplace away from my parents would not be good for them. I could do it. I've certainly dealt with, I've lost my children. Once somebody takes your children from you, taking your parents is, what's next? But my parents really need me. And so if you're going to parole me someplace to hide me, like you did like the others did Janice Freeman, that's great. But hide my parents too, please. It was back in 85. I saw the eyebrow. It was back in 85. Janice Freeman, when they paroled her, they didn't tell the media where she was. And if you're going to do that for me, do it for my parents. Don't do it for me. Do it for my parents, because they do not need the kookaloos. And I know, there you go. There's some insight. This is what insight has done, because I know what kookaloos. I live with kookaloos every day. I've become inured to it. You don't ever get used to kookaloos, but you learn how to survive them. My parents don't know how. My parents don't. My mom will do the same thing that I did back in 83. She'll get a phone call and she'll go out to meet somebody. My parents. Please don't parole me away from my parents. They need me. They, as much as you think I'm a danger to them simply because of the kookaloo factor, if the kookaloos can't find me, they'll go to my parents. They will. They will. They'll do whatever it takes, because I know what they do in here.
Ms. Downs, I'm pleased to hear that you've been able to keep your relationship up with your parents. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just getting some tissue. Oh, I didn't think I was going to need these this time. Thank you.
Okay. Take your time.
Okay.
What you've been able to maintain with parents. Any other relationships that you've been able to maintain that you'd like to share with that might help you if you release in the community? Are you involved in a romantic relationship at all? Any friendships or anything?
No, none that take me there. None that I would need. No.
Do you have any friends in the institution? People you trust?
Miss Wheeler asked me that last time. That friend is a hard word in prison.
Well, best I can come up with.
I don't have.
Use any words you want.
Okay, I have a lot of acquaintances in prison. There are a lot of people. I get along with almost everybody. But friends to me are somebody that it goes deeper. A friend is somebody that you communicate with, that you write to, that you call, that you go shopping with, that you hang out with, you go to the park with. And there's nobody here that I would call a friend. But I don't say that I'm not lonely. I mean, I don't say that so, oh, woe is me, because it's not like that. I have a lot of acquaintances. I have support, I have encouragement, but I wouldn't call them friends. Friend isn't a word that you use lightly. Not for me, it isn't.
Now, you sent the board a couple of letters containing some advertisements. You recall those letters? Why did you send us those letters, and what point are you trying to make?
Ooh. There's this silly girl, Rebecca Babcock. When Rebecca Babcock first started writing to me in 2006, in August of 2006, she claimed to be my daughter, and I knew she wasn't. But she claimed to be my daughter, and like I said, I've been looking for answers for a long time, and so anytime something extreme like that comes across under my door in the form of mail, I pay attention to it. So I wrote back to her and I said, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if you really were my daughter? Gosh, we've been separated for so long. Tell me all about yourself. Tell me all about your family. Tell me all about your friends. Because I want to know who put her up to this, because I knew she wasn't my daughter. Well, she wrote and she goes, oh, well, what she wrote was, I'm your daughter. I think I'm your daughter because this person told me that I'm your daughter. Who's my daddy? And I wrote back the first letter and said, wouldn't it be wonderful if you were my daughter? Well, gosh, tell me all about yourself, what you've done, who your friends are, who your family is. And she wrote back and she goes, oh, no, I can't tell a perfect stranger about my family. And I said, well, I thought you said I was your mom. So I wrote back, I thought you said I was your mom, so we're not strangers. And she again said, who's my daddy? And I said, I don't even know if you are Amy. If you were, I wouldn't tell you who Amy's father was if you're not Amy. It would be an infringement upon his privacy. And I asked her for the second time, because the first time I said, let's do a DNA test to find out. And she said, I don't want to do a DNA test. I just want to know who my daddy is. So the second time I asked her, let's do a DNA test. She said, no, I don't want your DNA. I want to know who my daddy is. Well, by then I knew that somebody was trying to find out, because nobody knows who Amy's father is, my youngest daughter. Nobody knows who her father is. I've never told, and I'm not going to tell. If he wants to tell, he can tell, but that's not my place. So we had 4 letters like this, and finally I told her, if you were Amy, somebody would be watching over you at all times. You would be safe, but there are people that are hunting for Amy. And had been since 1986. Somebody is hunting for Amy. And if you're not Amy, then you're in danger, and you need to get away from the people that are putting you up to doing this. Those are the letters that I wrote. I wish she would provide those letters to you, but of course she's not going to. But those were the letters that were written, and every time she refused to do a DNA, she goes, "Oh, I wouldn't trust you with my DNA." And I told her, "You don't have to trust me. My DNA is on file in Sacramento. Just do the DNA test there." "No, I don't want to do a DNA test. I want to know who's my daddy." I said, "My best guess is your daddy is the one who hurt my children. That's who your daddy is." And that's what I told her. By this time, I knew she was a better con than I was an investigator, and I cut it off. She says she cut it off. She can tell it that's fine. She can tell it that way if she wants. I don't care. But I know she's not my daughter. But I believed someone was putting her up to it. So when she went on 2020, then she went on... she went in the magazine, that Glamour magazine, and then somebody down here in Los Angeles contacted me, EI or something like that, contacted me and asked me to do a story with Rebecca Babcock, and I said no. And then she did Oprah. I thought, oh my gosh, this girl is getting in over her head. So I wrote to you and because I wanted to make it plain, she is in danger. Whoever is putting her up to this is a threat to her, because if they don't get what they want, I know what they did to my children, and if they don't get what they want, they may hurt her. Right now, every time she does an interview, she says, "Diane Downs is my mommy. Do you think I'm a monster too?" Every single interview. And if something horrible happens to...
Why did you send us those letters? That was my question.
Because last time when we had our parole board hearing, I was told that everything that I wrote was put on the internet. And I don't know if it's true, but that's what I was told, that the parole board stuff is public record and that it's put on the internet. Now, I don't know if you did it or somebody, I don't know how it happened, but I figured if I wrote you this, then it would be broadcast across the internet. This girl is not my daughter. I'm not claiming her. I will never claim her. Therefore, if somebody hurts her, they're not getting anything out of it. I did it to protect her. And I didn't care if it made me look like I was being extreme. To me, protecting her little boy is more important to me than worrying about people thinking that I'm extreme. Come on, I spent all these years looking like a ditzy dingbat on the TV just so that I could chum the water.
So
I wanted the people to know, not to hurt her.
So you believe that the man that hurt your children in 1983 is the father of this girl, this woman, I mean?
I told her that it's possible. I don't know, though. I don't know, or if it's a whole different group. I don't know. I'm on the inside, only getting pieces of information, most of which are not true. But all I know is that she's not my daughter, and that somebody's putting her up to this. And how many people can hate me? I mean, I'm not that important. I mean, how many different factions can there be out there that think they can get a chunk of $50,000 flesh? I don't know. I don't know who's put her up to it. And somebody has, because she wasn't even born when this happened, and yet she's just right there. She's just at me. I bet she won't take a DNA test, which means she knows she's not my daughter. She knows it. And that was the whole point that I was trying to make in the letter. If I had simply said, and I suppose I could have, Rebecca Babcock knows she's not my daughter. She refuses to take a DNA test. Here, put this online. I suppose I could have done that. But then you would have said, who's Rebecca Babcock? Because she's not that important to you. But
really,
I needed...
Ultimately, none of that has anything to do with the legal questions squarely in front of the board today, does it?
Nothing. None of it. I just simply knew that you guys put things online, or somebody did. I don't know who's doing it, so it's unfair of me to judge you and say that you're doing it. Somebody is putting it online, and that was the only way. I can't, if I was to send this letter and say, could you please put this online, nobody's going to. But if they think that they've stolen it from the board, then it goes online. I just wanted the owners, I wanted Rebecca Babcock's handlers to not hurt her, because there's not going to be any money in it for them. They're not going to be able to make a movie. They're not going to make a sequel. They just leave the girl and her little boy alone.
Okay. Well, I just want to make a statement that, ma'am, nearly all of the board's documents, are public documents. Some of them are confidential. by law. We don't put things on the internet. Some things are on the internet, but we don't spread things around the internet. But just so you know. Anyway,
Thank you.
I'm about at the end of my questions. If my board colleagues have questions for you, Ms. Downs. Go ahead.
All right, Ms. Downs. Well, I'll take a turn next and try to follow up with some questions that I had from your answers to Mr. Felton. He was asking you about your programming, and that's addressed in the institutional report on page 6. I know you don't have it with you, but for reference, it talks about you participating in the Transforming Lives Network, and that's described as a TV network program that provides small packets for self-awareness and learning for anger management, parenting, and victim awareness. And those are the three things that you mentioned in talking about your programming. So did you have anger management, parenting, and victim awareness separate from the Transforming Lives Network, or was that what you were referring to?
That's what I was referring to.
Okay.
There were probably, yeah.
So how does that work? Because this says it's a TV network program that provides packets for self-learning, or maybe I'm misunderstanding that. So is there actually a class where people all sit down together and somebody stands up in front and teaches?
No, it's federally, it's a federal program. The feds run it, and I guess the state buys into it or something. We have a TV, it's in our game room. They have a TV that sets up on the wall. One program, the parenting program, was Drew Bledsoe's father. He did I think it was something like a 3 or 4 week program where he would speak to a group. It's his own group. It's on TV like you guys. And he would speak to his own group, and they would have interaction. We as a group would sit, we would watch the show, then we would discuss it.
Okay. So you were a facilitator at that end of the process then? When you say you taught it, that's what you meant, you were like facilitated the discussion?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Well, except that whereas Drew Bledsoe's father could not answer the questions, I would have a workbook that I would be able to answer the questions. And usually, honestly, most answers come from within ourselves anyway. I mean, we already know the answers to what's in our soul, so.
Okay. Okay, well, that's good. So I was interested in you talking about anger management, and you said you don't get angry, and you've told us a number of times in your writing, and I think last time we saw you that, you're a nonviolent person, right?
For the most part, anybody can be provoked.
Well, what I was wondering about was, historically, in the PSI, it talks about information that you had previously, like, threatened people or menaced people. Or perhaps I'm getting my documents mixed up, but...
No. It was Doug Welch's letter.
In Doug Welch's letter. I was just turning to that. What about that? Are you saying that that's not accurate, that you didn't fire a weapon through the floor of the mobile home, that you didn't pull a gun on your ex-husband and point it at his head? What's the truth of all that?
I did fire a gun in the floor of a weapon into the floor of the mobile home. My ex-husband had beat me on September 4th. It was a regular occasion, but on this occasion, the police came. September 4th of 1982. The police were called because I was on the phone with a friend at that time, and she heard the attack. She called the police, and they came out. They made a report. They told me Sean Carnahan was the deputy sheriff. He sent me to the doctor to get a report and to the judge to get a restraining order. It was 10 days after that.
It was, yes. Then you're saying that these incidents with respect to your ex-husband were in some way a response to what you're describing as violence toward you, is that correct?
Yes. He came in 10 days later. He came into my house, and he was pounding on the door, and I fired the gun I ran into the bedroom, locked the door. He broke it. I ran into the bathroom, locked the door, and he was pounding, and so I fired the gun into the floor to scare him.
Okay, well, what about...
By pointing a gun at him.
What about the comments that Mr. Welch makes about other folks talking about your parenting, that you had hit the children, that you had threatened Cheryl or said you deserve to be killed? What about those comments?
My answer to that would be, we had a 6-week trial, and it was long and arduous and hurtful and hateful. Where were those people during trial? Because they weren't there.
Well, but
they certainly had they had 1 year to get their act together.
That's not an answer to my question. Okay.
Oh, I don't hit my children. I don't hit my children. I don't. Christy has been spanked once in her life. Danny's never been spanked. Cheryl's been spanked more than once in her life. But I don't, but it's always on the bottom.
Okay.
I don't hit my children. I don't lose my temper with them.
Okay.
And before we forget to talk about the threat against Robert Knickerbocker, can we address that one?
Okay.
Doug Welch wrote a letter saying that while I was in county jail, after my conviction, that I wrote a letter to Robert Knickerbocker in Chandler, Arizona, and threatened his life. That is a lie. I was in county jail. If I had written a threatening letter to anybody, the county jail captain would have received a copy of all my letters photocopied going out of the county jail. All of my phone calls are tape recorded. They would have gotten a copy of that letter. They would have presented it to the prosecutor, who would have charged me with obstructing of justice or threatening a state witness, and there would have been another charge against me. And at the very least, they would have had the photograph of this letter, and they would have presented it in court at my sentencing hearing as Exhibit A, and they didn't. It's a lie.
Okay.
It's a lie.
I was asking you about your programming, so that was anger management, and we talked about parenting. What's your job now, your inmate employment?
I am unassigned right now.
Okay. And they had in the report that you had been a Correctional Learning Network clerk, and that's over?
That was the TLN. That was the Transforming Lives.
Okay.
And
what happened? Why are you unassigned now?
They had to discontinue that because we're having some budget problems a little bit, and so they had to discontinue that program.
And are you looking for more employment, or what's your goal in terms of institutional employment?
Right now, I just tutor. I'm not assigned anywhere, but I tutor.
Is that a volunteer program, or are you paid?
I'm not paid, and I'm not given credit for it. I don't think anybody even knows I do it. I just do it.
Oh, it's just an informal, people who want some assistance, you're helping them? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
It's not like the law book literacy tutor or something? Okay.
Well, LABOC is that. There are no official, there's not, I have to describe, in California, when you get a job, they give you a piece of paper, and it says your name, your number, your housing, and your job description, and that's filed somewhere. LABOC tutors don't get one of these. The TLN tutors did.
Okay.
But LABOC doesn't. And so, LABOC is unrecognized and yet recognized. Our boss was fired. They had a lot of budget cuts, and a lot of people got fired from the prison, and our boss got fired, but we didn't. And so even though nobody is telling Sacramento that we're still doing this, we're still doing it, even though nobody knows we're doing it. We just keep doing it.
Well, I want to commend you for the work that's described in here, for your TLN work and your tutoring, and also for having a clear conduct for the last 4 years. Those are things the board looks at and that we consider to be very positive, so that's good to know. What are you doing for money then if you're not employed?
I get an allowance. I'm the oldest kid on the block. My parents send me an allowance every month.
Oh, I love that. That's nice of them. How much do they send you?
$95
Okay.
a month. I've gotten pay increases with the cost of living over the years.
You have money saved. Do you have anything, if you were to be paroled at some point, would you have savings, or what kind of financial resources would you have?
I don't, personally. I can tell you what my parents jokingly said, except my dad never jokes about money. I can tell you what my parents said in my last visit. My dad, I told you, is 80. He had a stroke. He's lost 30 pounds, and last time I talked to him on the phone, he thought he was going to die. He wrote me a letter and said that anyway, my dad's feeling his mortality because of the stroke, and he's lost weight. And so when they were here the last time, my brother works for Microsoft, my other brother works for Miller, and my sister is a teacher, and they all have good incomes. And my dad jokingly said, so when I die, I'm leaving everything to you because you're my only child who hasn't had a chance. So, but my dad never jokes about money. So I kind of have a feeling that I'm always going to be the stepchild. I'm always going to be, I don't know. I don't even know what the word would be. On my parents' largesse. I mean, that sounds really awful. I have skills. That's what's so sad. I have skills. I could work. I could get a job. I could make my own way.
Well,
I just couldn't go out and buy a house right now.
If you were to leave the institution, what marketable skills do you have?
I could be a secretary. I have typing skills, filing skills, secretarial skills, landscaping skills. I'm an electrician. I used to be. I wouldn't trust me to wire a house right now today, though. I think I need a little briefing up.
Electrician, where did you learn those skills?
Out on the street.
Okay.
I was an electrician on the street by trade.
Oh.
But I
thought you said you
everything has
postal service.
Yeah. I was.
Oh, okay.
I was an electrician from the time I was 22 until I was 25,
okay.
And then I was in the post office from 25 on.
Okay. And are you currently in touch with your brothers and sisters?
Yes, absolutely.
Are they able to come and visit you?
When James lived in Stockton, he would come once a month. When I was in Oregon and Paul was living in Oregon, he would come once a week. They now live in Texas, and when I tell you that they work for Miller and Microsoft, I'm not that small. They're like regional managers and stuff. They don't have weekends. They work all week, and then they work all weekend long too.
Okay.
So they have only been to visit twice since leaving California.
Now, Ms. Downs, when you were talking with Mr. Felton, and you were talking about how since around 2006 you've become a peaceful, calm person, you said it was because you finally got your answers, and I guess I didn't understand what that answer or those answers were. What were you talking about?
All these years I've been looking to find the person that murdered my daughter.
Right.
And by 2005, a woman moved into my cell who could tell me every judge, every prosecutor, even Judge Ochoa. She could tell me every judge that's ever been involved in any case that whether appeal, direct case, whatever. She could tell me every one of those people. She told me their first names. She told me their descriptions. This woman had memorized everything about everything in my case. That made me very anxious, very stressed, very anxious that she would know this. She told me she described the man who murdered my daughter in ways that even I had forgotten until she said it. She knew who he was. And I said, why don't you tell the authorities? And she goes, oh, it's no big deal. From that point on, even though I continued to hunt and listen, it became very clear to me that whoever did this isn't ever going to tell me. It's always going to be a game, a sicko game. So what's the point of struggling? It's like being a hamster in a bag and the air is running out. I just refuse to struggle anymore. Sometimes you really have to reach a point of knowing there's just nothing else I can do. And so, except make myself crazy for them, and I'm not going to.
So who was this Sally of yours who knew all this stuff about you?
Julie Mayo, M-A-Y-O.
So, and Ms. Mayo said to you that she knew who murdered your daughter and injured your children?
Yes. 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 Yep. She used the name Craig Huckins, and she used the name Jim Haynes. And described them.
And did she have evidence of this? Or what was her knowledge based on?
No. I have no idea. That's what I'm telling you. I have no idea. She wouldn't tell me. All she would do is...
Haven't you talked to us about Jim Haynes yourself? Or when you talked about Jim Haynes, were you referring to what Ms. Mayo told you, or where did you get that information?
This was years ago, since 1993, Jim Haynes has been a well-known name. Craig Huckins never was. When she told me the name Craig Huckins, she knew something that, because I had never used that name because I wanted it. It's like people come along and they say things because they want to go on TV. They want to be famous, whatever. And so they'll drop lugs so that because they think that they're going to get popular. So I never use the name Craig Huckins because I don't want people to be popular. I don't even know that Jim Haynes is the one who did it. I want physical evidence. Just like I wouldn't testify against my ex-husband, I'm not going to testify against Jim Haynes without physical evidence. So Craig Huckins is the man who sent Jim Haynes. And I've never, ever, ever told anybody that name because I wanted somebody, if somebody could tell me that, then they knew. And she told me that. So she knew. But it's not evidence I can use in court, and that's when I realized the struggle's over. There are people who know, and to them this is a game. It's a sicko game, and it's fun for them, and they don't care about humanity, about decency, and no matter how much I struggle, I'll never get the proof, ever. And so what's the point of struggling?
How do you think it turned out that you are the focus of apparently a number of people's sicko game?
I don't know.
Do you still believe, as you told us before, that your children were injured and one of them killed to shut you up? Is that still what you think happened?
Shut me, I don't know so much as shut me up, or I can speculate, Miss Wheeler, and I told you that last time. I can speculate, but I don't know. Nobody will tell me. They know. They're the ones who did it, and until they tell me why they did it, I won't know why. I can reason. I have reasoning skills, and I try to reason. It's to make closure. If A equals B and B equals C, then A must equal C. And sometimes in this case, there's just too much of the alphabet swirling around in the bowl of soup. And I can reason and reason until I'm absolutely exhausted. And I still don't know for sure. And Julie Mayo wasn't going to tell me anything. She would drop lugs, she would drop names, she would raise an eyebrow, she would lift a pinky finger, she would cock a shoulder, and then she'd say, "Oh, well, I don't know then." And then she'd walk away. It's like, oh my God, this woman, I don't know what she was trying to do. Maybe she was trying to make me flash. I don't know. Maybe she was trying to make me so frustrated that I would just lay in bed and cry every night. I don't know. I don't know why she did it, but she knew the name Craig Huckins, and nobody knew that name. So she knew something.
I have to say, Ms. Downs, I want to give you a chance to respond to this because it's swirling around in my head. Is that a lot of these things that you say, and particularly in those letters that you wrote, they make you sound paranoid. Do you see that?
Yes, I'm paranoid. I'm not going to deny that, absolutely. I had a lieutenant once, it was a watch commander. When I work on the yard, I work very hard. And about halfway through the day, about 1 o'clock, I have to lay down and take a nap for about 20 minutes. One day the watch commander comes walking out, and his shadow fell across my face, and he goes, "Diane, do you know where you are?" I looked around and I said, "It looks like prison still." He said, "You can't just sleep on the yard. You're not paranoid enough." I said, "Oh, I'm paranoid." You have to be paranoid to live in prison. You have to. Even if you're sleeping on the yard, you're always never really quite asleep because there's always somebody looking. People get stabbed in here. People get their faces cut in here.
Okay,
Paranoia is part of the prison program.
but we talk to hundreds of prisoners a year, literally. Many who have been down for crimes as bad as yours, have been down for a long time. And it's hard for me to think of anyone else who writes or talks as you do of there being, in essence, a conspiracy to injure you, to injure your kids, a conspiracy that extends so far that you send us a photograph out of a magazine and say that this person's wearing a coat that has my children's DNA on it. It sounds crazy.
I did not say that coat has Cheryl's or Christy's DNA on it.
Did you not say
I
it
said,
should be
if this
tested
was
for
you,
that?
I said, if this was you, wouldn't you want somebody to test it? I'm not saying it does. I don't know if it does.
Well, you see, even the fact that you're saying it might, I mean, that really sounds kind of crazy.
Well, given the fact that the girl resembles me and resembles Rebecca Babcock, and Rebecca Babcock came to me out of the blue and claimed to be my daughter when she's clearly not my daughter, and both girls are connected to murders, and now one of them is in a bright sunny summer day sitting on a dock in wearing shorts or a dress and nice summer, and she's got this big heavy Levi jacket on. Doesn't that seem odd to you? I mean, it seems odd to me.
Okay, well,
I mean, she was wearing a pretty little dress and a Levi jacket. That just seemed odd to me.
Okay, well, I had one final question, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Baker. And this is another thing that concerns me, and when something concerns me, I do like to share it with the person we're talking to so that they can give me some feedback. And I was asking you about your programming, and you said that you had victim empathy or victim awareness. Last time you and I talked, we had a little discussion about remorse and regret, I think it was.
Yes.
And today, you have really struck me by showing such genuine emotion and sense of feeling about your parents. And, needing a Kleenex and feeling really bad about that. But I have not seen that equivalent emotion, or in fact any emotion, from you in talking about your children who were so grievously wounded, one of whom died. In fact, you talked about the trial and the Christy doll and the Danny doll, and it almost made me ill. I could practically cry just listening to that. Why is this? Why are you shedding a tear over your parents, and you can talk about your kids in such a cold and emotionless manner?
Let me give you an example. When David, in the Bible, when King David's son was sick and dying, he cried, he ripped his clothes, and he put ashes on his head. When they came and said, "Your son is dead," he got up, he washed his face, and he went about his business. And they said, "How can you be so cold that you don't care that your son is dead?" He said, "When my son was alive, I petitioned God and I prayed, please don't let anything bad happen to them. But now that my son is gone, there's nothing more that God can do. I am begging you not to put my parents in danger. My children are safe. Fred Hughie took my children to safety. What's gone is in the past. All the crying to God, all of the heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching pain that I experienced back then is gone. It's history, and there's no petitioning God for that to come back. But I can petition you not to put my parents in danger. That is why you see a difference between the living and the gone.
So you no longer have any sense of loss or sorrow or regret of what a horrible thing has happened to your kids?
Absolutely I do. I live with it every day. When other people in here talk about their children, I think of my children, and I can't talk about my children. I'm not allowed to talk about my children, so I have to internalize it. It becomes my private grief, my private joy, my private memories. I have conditioned myself not to ever let anybody in. They can't. They can't get in because all they want to do is hurt it. And if I seem to have a wall up all the time, it's a self-defense mechanism. It is.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ms. Downs.
Ms. Baker?
Thank you.
Well, Ms. Downs, I do want to comment that I'm quite pleased that you got involved in some programming since we last saw you, because I know that was an issue when we saw you a couple of years ago, that you hadn't taken part in any programming. So, good job. And so I want to ask you, when you're tutoring someone, how does that make you feel? What do you get out of that?
Well, wow, when they first come to me, it makes me feel happy that they've taken the initiative because they know to come to me. I don't know they exist. So it makes me happy for them that they've taken the initiative. As we're working on the chalkboard, it makes me feel pride in them because they'll actually take the chalkboard. Some of these women are afraid to initiate anything unless it's as a group. They do things as groups. And so when a woman will come and she'll take the chalk out of my hand and she will do mathematics on the board that she could never have done before, it makes me feel pride that they look at that and they go, oh my gosh, I got it. I didn't think I could. And then when they go and take the test and they come back and they hug me, which I'm not really much of a hugger, but when they come out on the yard and they hug me and they're crying, it makes me feel that we've done something together, that I have actually participated. It's as if I went and took the test with them. It's a small victory because I know this is one person that now that when she goes home, because this is what I tell them, you need to know, because first of all they'll say, why do I need a GED? I said, because you're raising children, and if you don't do it, your children say, well, Mom didn't do it. And besides that, you need to know these things because when they come home from school, they have these questions. So when they finish the test, they always say, now I can teach my son or my daughter. And it's like, and it makes me feel like a part of me gets to go home and do that. So it makes me feel, I don't know, victorious, good, like we've accomplished something together.
Good. I want to talk about your parole plans, and your parents are getting up there in years. Your father's 80 years old. He's had some health issues. You recognize that he's becoming more and more frail as time goes on. But what we haven't heard you talk about is your parole plans if your parents aren't there. If something were to happen to them, what would you do?
Well, see, now you make me feel like I need to call home. Now you make me wonder if something happened to my dad in the past week
I just want you to be thinking that, you have one goal here for your parole, but sometimes what we want doesn't materialize, and so where's Plan B or Plan C?
Well, the prison has seen fit, and I'm not saying this to be judgmental, the prison has seen fit to make sure that I'm pretty flexible. They've moved me from prison to prison, yard to yard, unit to unit, room to room, and I've proven to them and to myself that I can pretty much land on my feet wherever I go. So I have skills. I could live alone. I don't have a problem living alone. I spent 8.5 years in ADSEG and didn't go stir crazy. So I don't know if that's what you're asking, but are you wondering if I'm going to try to sneak and see my parents, or if you're afraid that my parents are going to die, that I would fall apart, or that I wouldn't have a foundation, or...
I'm just
I don't know
wondering-
exactly what you're asking.
Just wondering at the time, if you're paroled and your parents aren't there, physically they aren't there, or maybe they're in a place where they're being cared for where you can't live with them, what would your plans be?
Okay, well, that's kind of a couple questions. Ooh, you're making me antsy now. That's a couple questions. If they're in like an elder living, like my aunt lived in an elder dormitory thing, and they had to live, she couldn't have young people living there, then I would live someplace in the city. If they were living in a place like that, then I would live in the city there so that I could visit them, because they could still have visitors, and I would be able to come and cook and those kinds of things for them. Take my dad to the doctors and the hospitals. But if I couldn't see them at all, if for their safety, if I couldn't see them, or if my dad was passed or whatever, then, I mean, I'm going to be okay wherever I land. I am. I am a resilient woman.
Okay, so if you ended up in Oregon, what would you do? How would you support yourself?
First, I would laugh, because I can't imagine you guys would ever put me in Oregon. I could, but I suppose that's why you're saying Oregon. I don't know. I work in construction. I'm sure that I could get a construction job right away, because I have skills in construction. An attorney might hire me because I'm bright enough that I can learn things quickly. I have skills. I have typing skills and filing skills, so I could even work as a receptionist or a filing clerk in an attorney's office. Certainly no wallflower when it comes to understanding the law. I'm not a genius with it, but at the same time, I've got the basic gist of it. I really do have good people skills. You guys only get to see the crazy stuff when it's time to be on TV. But when it comes, if you could see me in my own element, if you could see me tutoring, I'm not like this. So, do you guys know something about my parents? Do you guys know something about my parents I need to know?
No.
All right.
No, it's just I'm
sorry.
I'm
There's
a
that
what-if
paranoia.
thinker
I'm sorry. Okay. I am too. So you have to kind of understand where I am when you cover all the bases. All right.
Okay, and so I'm just wondering, have you thought about Plan B, because you have talked for a couple of years now to go and live with your parents. What about your siblings? Would there be an opportunity to live with them?
Yes. James and Paul both have, they want me. They actually want me to come live with them. I feel that I should live with my parents because they're older and they need me. My brothers don't need me, but my parents do need me, and that's why I think about them the most. I mean, every year they get older, but yeah, both of my brothers, both James and Paul, would take me in and have said so.
Okay. Do they have families?
So, in fact, James and Mary have no children, and they actually wrote a letter to you, oh heavens, when was it? It's been a few years now. It's probably been it's on file there. James wrote a letter to you and said that he would take me in and give me a job.
Okay.
So.
I know that we talked at your last hearing about, people who write you and looking for information. And I guess I'm just curious, after all of this time, when people write you, why do you even respond?
Thank you. Where were you like 20 years ago? Yeah, I could have used this advice 20 years ago. Part of me in the beginning, I would respond because my mom raised me that if somebody writes you a letter, you're supposed to write back. It's just the socially acceptable thing to do. Then you realize, and I would only write one letter. Thank you for writing. I'm sorry I'm not in a place mentally or emotionally that I have time to write to you, and that was it. So it'd be a hello, goodbye letter. And there really aren't any people that I write to any longer than that. You aren't going to, if you were to petition for anybody to produce letters that says I corresponded with anybody, the only person you're ever going to get is Rebecca Babcock, and that was 4 letters simply because I was trying to find out who was working her, and maybe 2 other people, and for that very same reason. I don't correspond, but then they don't write all the time. I mean, periodically people write, but I don't write to them.
Okay.
So,
After your last hearing, they put you in segregation for your own protection. Can you tell us about that?
yes. Apparently somebody said they wanted to kill me. Again. It happens a lot. And I'm sorry if I seem flip. I don't mean to sound flip, but this is what I was trying to tell you about becoming inured. Prison makes you numb to, first of all, you become paranoid. And the lifers who've done as much time as I have that come to you and they don't sound paranoid, trust me, they're faking it. Because you cannot live, and especially in a men's prison, you cannot survive prison without becoming paranoid. It's just part of who you are. You're always looking over your shoulder. You always sit with your back to the wall. You always want to know why somebody's being nice to you who's never talked to you until it's canteen day. And those are small pieces of paranoia. And it becomes part of your chemistry after a while. But also, knowing every day that you could be killed, you become numb to it. It's like, yeah, this could be the day. And you see it happen to people around you. So when somebody threatens to kill me again, that's how I feel. It's like, again, who was it this time? And that's what it was. But the staff take it seriously because it's their job, and I think they genuinely are concerned about me. So they put me in ADSEG because it was an anonymous threat. It wasn't like somebody walked up to a cop and said, I hate her and I'm going to hurt her. It wasn't like that. It was an anonymous, somebody apparently dropped a note and stuck a note either in the mailbox or under the cop's door. I never did get the story of how it showed up, but there was a note that was passed that somebody was going to kill me. And I didn't know about it and nobody would tell me while I was in ADSEG. And the whole time I was in ADSEG, nobody would talk to me. I kept standing at the door with this roll of toilet paper saying, I need toilet paper. And nobody would talk to me. I'm like, okay, no, it's not my job. Somebody's got, so yeah, it was rough. It was 5 days of not knowing why I was there, why the cops, because the cops always talk to me. I'm like their old yeller dog. And it's like no cop would talk to me. Nobody would give me toilet paper. Nobody would come to my door except to put a food tray in, not even say good morning. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? I had no idea what was going on. Nobody would tell me. And so then finally, after 5 days, 2 captains came in and said, what the heck is going on? And I was out. But it took that. So, and it wasn't until sometime after that the lieutenant told me that there was a threat, and that was it. So,
why do you think that you gained so much media interest and forgive the phrase, but you just kind of bring the wackos out of the woodwork here?
I do, don't I?
Yes, you
I don't
do.
know. I know. Okay. I don't know. See, I'm a what-if person, too. I could speculate until we all reach the point of exhaustion, and it still isn't going to prove anything. I don't know why. I can tell you what some people... See, but if I tell you this, then you're going to... All right, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you, and you're going to twist it. Girls walk up to me back in the day, years ago, 20 years ago, they go, oh, you think you're all that, don't you? It's like, no, I'd be sitting down pulling weeds, my head down, covered up in dirt, knees all covered in dirt, smudges everywhere, my hair poking up every which direction, pulling weeds, and some girl woke up, she goes, you just think you're all that. It's like, no, I don't. I'm the one pulling weeds, and you're the one mad. You must think I'm all that, just because you're a movie star. That's not it. I'm not a movie star. Nobody interviewed me for a movie. Nobody interviewed me for a book. Nobody got my permission. Nobody got my signature. And I think that's the wacko factor. That's all
being portrayed in the media.
And they wish they were. And yes. And that's what I think Rebecca Babcock is after. And she doesn't understand that whoever is putting her up to this... Trust me, she doesn't want to be in the starring role. It's all bad. It's all bad.
Well, and this isn't about Rebecca Babcock. I mean, this is just about people that believe that, you were wrongly convicted and then want to contact you and then make death threats against you. And What is it, you know, what is it about you?
It's always...
And what have you done in your response that encourages this?
I don't write to them. I don't encourage it. That's what I'm telling you. If you were to go online and say, please, I'll pay you $1 for every letter that Diane Downs has ever written to you, you won't find any. The only letters I write are a half a page that says, I'm sorry, I'm busy working on an appeal. I don't have time to write to you. Thank you for your support and encouragement. It's not you, it's me. And I send it. They're like form letters. That is all. I don't encourage it at all. I don't write. I don't have correspondence.
Okay. Do you think that your correspondence to the board encourages that interest in you? And when you're talking about, you know, somebody wearing a jacket that was like the jacket of the bushy-haired stranger, and wouldn't you want it tested for DNA, don't you think that people go, wow, this is bizarre stuff?
Okay, 2 questions. I'm going to try to remember to answer both of these. First of all, I didn't write this stuff last time. When I wrote to the board last time, I wrote to the board because I thought it was between me and the board. It was after the fact I found out that it all went online. So what I have done this time is different than what I did last time. And you can see that. You can see the tone and the kinds of letters that were written. What I wrote this time was because I knew it went online, and I wanted to warn whoever was putting Rebecca Babcock up to this, don't hurt her little boy, because you're not going to be able to make a movie on it the way you guys did me. All right, not you, but for the universal you, whoever. All right. You asked why I think the kookaloos come out, and I wanted to come back to that. It's a known fact that when people run polls, if you run a poll for, do you believe that it's safe to have yellow lines running down the line, or do you think they distract you while you're driving? All right. The only people that are going to respond to polls are extremists. The people, the average, everyday, run-of-the-mill people don't answer polls because they don't care. They're too busy living and feeding their families and going to work and petting the dog. So anytime something like this happens, you're always going to get the extremists, the people who extremely believe, the people who extremely don't believe. The average, there's 350 million people in the United States, and I've probably had 500 people write to me. That's nothing compared to 350 million people. So it's not like there's really a lot of activity. But the activity that we have is extreme. And so when people like Rebecca Babcock contact me and go, I'm your daughter, I'm going to get rich, let's go find my daddy. They're hunting for something. I mean, literally every letter that I've gotten has said, where's Amy now? Where's Amy now? I mean, that's the one current theme for all these letters. Where's Amy now? Never where's Christy and Danny. Never, none of that. And even the people that would say, oh, I saw Christy and Danny, they're doing really good. They're lying. So why are you saying that? They're lying because every phone has a little camera on it. My parents, they drive my parents crazy. My dad says, we just got word from somebody who saw Christy and Danny, they're doing so good. I said, Dad, they're lying to you. He says, Diane, why do you say that? And I said, did they send you a picture? Well, no. I said, every phone in America has a little camera on it. Even if they just stood there like this and clicked the picture, they could. Nobody has seen Christy and Danny. Dad, stop listening to the kookaloos. But they have such a need to see their grandchildren that they believe anything. It just brings out the extremists. And I don't think 500 extremists is really, I mean, when you consider how many extremists, the average, the ratio is for 350 million people, 500 is a small ratio.
And I guess I compare that to the other folks we see where they don't have people writing in like you do. You have made a statement here today and in your correspondence that you will never reveal Amy's father and who that individual is. But in the pre-sentence investigation that was done following, I believe it was your escape, you do name the father.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Did not?
Did not.
Okay. Well, then who was that individual that was named?
Not Amy's father. Amy's father, Amy was... Amy was artificial insemination. And Amy's father will never be named.
And is that the first time that information has come out?
Yep.
Right. Ms. Downs, if you were not to be granted parole, how would you spend your time until your next hearing in front of the board? What would you work on?
Same things that I've been doing the past 2 years, unless you have some suggestions that I could incorporate, but I would continue to do the same things that I've been doing the past 2 years.
Okay. I believe those are all the questions that I have. Thank you.
I have a follow-up.
Thank you.
I had a follow-up question, Ms. Downs. You said a couple times, and you said to Ms. Baker, if you could see me tutoring or on the yard, you'd see a different person than this media presentation.
Yes.
And I wondered why you haven't submitted anything to us. I mean, a lot of inmates do. Letters of support, correctional officers who comment on your adjustment and how you're doing, or friends, or, things like that. Why haven't you given us an opportunity to see that other side of you?
Well, I'm going to point out, and I don't mean to embarrass you, ISU is sitting here. The Investigative Services Unit representative is sitting here with me. And I won't ask to put her on the spot, but the reason correctional officers don't write letters for inmates in the California penal system is because other officers who are angry at other officers will call that overfamiliarity.
Okay,
It is very difficult in...
If that's something that the COs don't do there, that's fine, and that's perfectly understandable. But are there others? Are there inmates perhaps that you've tutored? I mean, you say that none of them are what you would call a friend, but it sounds as if you do feel close and to a degree to a number of people. Are there other folks who might give us a picture of who you are?
I never thought of asking an inmate to write a letter to the board for me.
Okay.
You don't live with these people.
Okay, well, I just wondered, and I do know that here in Oregon prisons, particularly in the women's prison, we do often get a number of letters from other women who testify to the kindness or the support that they've had from the person that we're seeing.
And from staff. I know. I understand that. I realize that. But it doesn't happen here. And I could send you lots of letters from inmates, but all of them you would say, wonder how many noodles this cost. I mean, there's always going to be the skepticism that goes behind it, because for me, I'm the kind of person, if I don't see it, I don't believe it. And maybe I'd be a really hard parole board member.
All right. I did, Ms. Downs, at this point want to give you the opportunity. Is there anything you would like to say to the board before we conclude this portion of the hearing?
No.
Okay.
Nothing that I can think of.
All right. And traditionally, when I was recognizing the folks that were here, I kind of went over this point quickly, but I did want to again say for the record that we did receive a letter from the Lane County District Attorney's Office expressing their views on the matter, and also in that it did express the wishes of the victim and their family in this matter as well. So at that point, we are going to go off the record. We're going to enter into deliberations, and therefore we're going to retire to a room that Chemeketa has kindly provided for us, and we are going to come back with a decision in this matter, so that may take a few minutes. So we are then going to stand down, and Ms. Downs, we will have that decision in just a few minutes. If you can wait there, and Staff there, California, if you stand by, please. Thank you all.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sorry.
We are back on the record and recording, and the board has reached a unanimous decision. Can you hear and see me all right, Ms. Downs?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, good. I always like to make sure, and just to repeat again, we have reached a unanimous decision. And that is applying the substantive law in effect at the time of your crime, including ORS 144.228 and OAR 255.38005. The board finds that you have a mental or emotional disturbancy, deficiency, condition, or disorder predisposing you to the commission of any crime to a degree rendering you a danger to the health or safety of others. Therefore, the condition that made you dangerous is not in remission, and you do continue to remain a danger. And the board would reach that same result under the current rules. Further, the board makes the following finding, and we actually have a unanimous and a split decision here, so bear with me. The board has unanimously decided that it is not further pursuant to ORS 144.228 1AB. The board finds that it is not reasonable to expect that you would be granted a release date before, and we have a split decision on this. One member finds that it would not be reasonable to expect that you would be granted a release date before 8 years from your current parole consideration date. Two members find, and this is the controlling majority decision, it would not be reasonable that you would be granted a release date before 10 years from your current parole consideration date. Therefore, Ms. Downs, the board is deferring your parole consideration date 10 years for a parole consideration date of March 9th, 2021. A review hearing will then be scheduled in December of 2020 with reports pursuant to statute. This finding is based on, but not limited to, the following factors in Oregon Administrative Rule 255-062-0016. Factor number 4, which is the inmate's failure to demonstrate understanding of the factors that led to his or her, in your case her, criminal offenses. Factor 5, the inmate's demonstrated lack of effort to address criminal risk factors of psychological or emotional problems. Factor number 9, the inmate's inability to experience or demonstrate remorse or empathy. And factor number 10, demonstrated poor planning and foresight. We finish up by saying, Ms. Downs, pursuant to ORS 144.280, you have the right to request an interim hearing not earlier than 2 years from today for the purpose of demonstrating that there is reasonable cause to believe that you may be granted a change in the terms of confinement. That is the ruling of the board for today. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. No, thank you.
I'll tell you that the board will release a lengthier finding of facts and conclusion of law in a written form, in a board action form, and that will come out within the next week or two. With the holidays and all, it may take a little longer than that, but we'll try to get that to you as quickly as we can. So again, Ms. Downs, go ahead.
Could you also send me a copy of the 144.280? Because I don't know what that is. Nobody sent it to me.
Okay.
So I don't know what it is. I have no Oregon law books up here. Down here.
We'll work on making that available to you, ma'am. Again, I'm pleased that you participated in today's hearing. The board found it very meaningful to hear your thoughts on the matter, and appreciate having that. Like I said, it makes a great difference for the board to have the inmate participate in these hearings. Board members, comments from Ms. Downs?
Well, I did tell you, Ms. Downs, during the hearing that I was pleased with your clear conduct and working on programming, and I really encourage you to to go ahead with that. And I did note that the psych eval, there was a recommendation that you would benefit from psychological counseling. I know that that's not something that's readily available, but if you do have any resources that you could seek something of that sort out, or we're always encouraging people to do self-study to the extent they can. Well, I just encourage you to do whatever programming you can get access to.
Thank you.
I would echo that, Ms. Downs, and I would also encourage you to think about your parole plans and where you will live, and have not just one plan, but maybe 2 or 3 plans, and start saving some money as you can, because the world is very different from the one that you left, and you need to make sure that you've got some money to help you during the transition.
Thank you.
Finally, before I go off the record, I just really want to thank the folks here at Chemeketa for accommodating us. You've been very professional to work with, and we at the board do appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to conclude the hearing, and we're off the record.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So what did they...